Yo guys, Superior David here. United in Stormwind is about to release, or maybe it has already released depending on when you're watching this video, which means it's time for me to give you decks that you can play day one of the expansion. So I have for you today 20 Superior decks that you can play day one of United in Stormwind. As always, there will be 2 for every class. This time I have 1 using the new quest for the class and 1 without the quest, just so you can use these quests if you want to. And some of these decks I have to say will be competitive, while others will be more memey, and some lean on some of the older cards a bit more, just for those budget-minded players. Basically, I just wanted to have a little bit of something for everyone, so you have no excuse. No one has an excuse to be playing fully optimized meta decks from the previous expansion day one. Because let's be honest here, that's pretty inferior. And I don't want you guys to be inferior, which is why if you have not subbed to the channel already, you should totally drop the sub, because it's guaranteed to make you 69% more superior. But anyways, with that out of the way, let's get into these decks. So as always, we'll be starting things off with my favorite class, Druid, and for the first archetype, we have one that I think people might be underrating a bit, and that is the new Quest Druid. Basically, we run every attack gaining card at Druid's disposal here, just so we can consistently complete the new Druid quest. And this eventually rewards us with the new Guff the Tough. Now, this may not seem like the most exciting reward, especially compared to some of the other quests, but because Guff has Taunt, you can actually use Mark of the Spike Shell to get multiple copies of Guff to just keep smacking your opponent in the face for 8 every turn, while also developing a huge threat. And that's really powerful. I believe people are underrating this archetype because they're viewing it as more of an aggro deck with Guff as a top end finisher, when I feel that's not how this deck is supposed to be played at all. In actuality, I think it's supposed to be more of a mid-rangey combo archetype where you focus on surviving until you complete your quest, and you just keep slamming down Guffs turn after turn, just smacking your opponent in the face a bunch of times. Now, to consistently make this deck work, I threw in a lot of card draw, including the new Cornelius Rome, which I think is pretty busted. Even if you only sticks around for 1 turn, that's some pretty nice card draw, and then anything more is probably game winning because you're just getting so much value. Then, since I think it's going to take a while to complete this quest, we've got the Entrapped Sorceress to get us some premium Druid spells, and including hopefully some attacking spells so we can complete this quest just a bit faster. Then finally, I figured it would be a good idea to run the new Royal Librarian to deal with potential taunts, which can really give this archetype a hard time since we want to be smacking face every turn. And since the Royal Librarian has tradable, you can just cycle it away in matchups where you would prefer that sweet card draw. So I think this is a really powerful card. Now for my other Druid deck, I have an archetype that sort of caught me by surprise during the theory crafting streams, and that is Taunt Aggro Druid. This deck revolves around exploding onto the board using the Razormane Battle Guard and the new Oracle of Elune to cheat out a bunch of cheap taunt minions, which will in turn protect that Oracle of Elune, so you can just go wide and snowball really hard. Then you can turn this board into some serious damage using Arbor Up or the new Sow the Soil, or alternatively you can make your board just super awkward to clear with Greybow or the new Composting, which is just ridiculous card draw. And as you can tell, I'm very big on card draw, which is why we have the good old Cornelius Rome coming back into the list here, as well as the Living Seed. And I know Living Seed might seem a bit weird because we only run 2 beasts, and they're already pretty cheap, but I think they're both so nutty to combo with the Oracle of Elune that I think it's worth having a way to just consistently tutor them up, especially with a discount. Then to round out the list, we've got the Best in Shelf for just a flexible board development card, and that you could trade it away in a pinch if you need some card draw. And then we also have Kazakis because we don't have any 4-drops, so why the heck not? And that is it for Druid. Now we'll be moving on to Hunter, and first up I have for you a Quest Hunter, which is shaping up to be a fun and powerful archetype in my opinion. Basically, we want to cast a bunch of damage dealing spells to complete our quest just as soon as possible, so we can eventually get that sweet 0-mana hero power that refreshes when we cast a spell. And to complete this quest, we run a lot of amazing damage spells, including the new and totally busted Aim Shot. And then we have a couple more of the B tier spells in my opinion, like Arcane Shot and Overwhelm, just so we can have that critical mass to consistently complete this quest. And when you do complete your quest, I think you want to pop off with Lock and Load and other cheap spells to have these huge miracle turns where you hopefully burst your opponent down with that refreshing 0-mana hero power. Now real fast, I think a mistake a lot of people are going to be making when building this deck is going all spells and no minions, which let's be honest here, if you're running no minions in your deck, you're going to get run over real fast. So that's why I'm running a Warsong Wrangler package in my list, but I made the controversial decision to replace Wolpertinger with the Encumbered Pack Mule because I think it just makes more sense curve-wise in our list, because we're always playing the quest on turn 1, so I feel we have less of a need for a 1-drop like Wolpertinger because we never play it on 1 anyways. And the Mule also has good synergy with the Warsong Wrangler, and frankly I'm just very bullish on the Encumbered Pack Mule. I think it's going to be an all-star card in this expansion. Now for my next Hunter list, I've got for you a super spicy meme deck that I'm so excited to play day one, and that is Elwyn Boar Hunter. The goal of this deck is to use Hunter's beast duplication effects like Dire Frenzy and Selective Breeder, as well as the new Devouring Swarm and Northshire Farmer to generate and kill off enough Elwyn Boars to equip the mighty Sword of 1,000 Truths. Then you just sort of smack your opponent in the face and like absolutely destroy them with a sword. Do I think this deck will be good? Probably not, but will it be a lot of fun? Abso-freaking-lutely. And I think Hunter, with all of its like beast tutoring, will probably be the best class to pull off the like Sword of 1,000 Truths shenanigans in Standard at least. So if you're looking to make this happen, like if you're looking to pop off with that Sword of 1,000 Truths, definitely check out this deck. Now moving right along, next up we've got Mage, and honestly I feel like Mage is just meant to sling spell space this expansion. So first up I have for you a no minion quest Mage. Now most games I don't think you're really going to need the quest to win. You're going to like just cheat mana with Incanter's Flow and like send spell space like Spell Mage is already doing, and you don't really need that spell damage +3. But where I think the quest is going to be very useful is in those slower matchups like Control Priest and Control Warrior, where they have like a bunch of life gain and can sometimes outlast you. And in those games the strategy is going to be like complete your quest and then just draw through like most of your deck so you can like consistently draw the new spell Ignite, and then you just keep sending those Ignites face with like that spell damage +3 until your opponent dies. It makes these matchups almost auto win for Spell Mage now, because those Ignites represent so much damage to the point where I cut Mask of Cthulhu from this list. And I know that sounds crazy because Mask of Cthulhu is really powerful, but at 7 mana, it's a bit more inflexible. So I think you're going to be seeing this in Spell Mage. Ignite's probably going to take the place of Mask of Cthulhu, and I think that's just the way to build Spell Mage going forward. Now onto my next Mage deck, and I have to warn you guys, this next one's going to be pretty hot, and that's because I have for you a Fire Mage. Now basically this is like an Age Wind spell damage mage that incorporates the fire spell synergy that Mage is receiving in the new expansion, and it's going to be like playing out similarly to the Spell Mage in that like you're going to be throwing spell space until your opponent dies. But this archetype has an interesting win condition itself, and that is the new Grand Magus Antonidas, which feels like an absolute bomb against any slower decks. And like this effect might be hard to trigger, but between like cheap fire spells like Ignite, First Flame, and Hot Streak, I think you're going to be able to consistently like pull this off. Then as for other new cards, we've got the Prester's Pyromancer for fire spell damage, and then like the Sanctum Chandler for card draw, which both actually seem decent to me. I think other people are a bit more down on them, but I'm cautiously optimistic. And I think the same could be said for this archetype as a whole. Like I don't know if it's going to be better than Spell Mage, but I see the potential here, and I don't think you should like completely write off this archetype. Now moving right along to Paladin, we've got a deck that I'm so excited to play day one, and that is Quest Paladin. This deck wants to play like a bunch of different 1-mana cards so that you can complete this quest like as soon as possible and get that ridiculous upgraded hero power, which I think will be enough to win games on its own, especially if you get down that like Lothraxian. So to make sure this consistently happens, I've got a secret package for some deck thinning, as well as the new like Alliance Bannerman just for like minion card draw. And then I even got the Talon Forging just to like guarantee the Lothraxian draw, because I think he's just that good in this list. And I think most decks are going to have a hard time dealing with like 2/3/3s with Divine Shield, which they are going to like need to deal with because we run Conviction, which means like we can threaten like a lot of burst damage even if just like a few minions stick on the board. And like in an earlier version of this deck, I even included like the Battleground Battlemaster just for more potential burst, but like I deemed it to win more. But if you want to like spice things up, I think you can like throw in like a copy or two. Now for my other Paladin deck, we've got a Blast from the Past archetype that like I honestly wasn't expecting support for in this expansion, but I'm totally cool with it, and that is Hand Buff Paladin. There seems to be a lot of power specifically with like hand buffing through losing Divine Shield with cards like Prismatic Jewel Kit and the new legendary High Lord 4 Dragon. So we lean into this really hard with this deck, with almost like all of our minions having Divine Shield. But what I think is really going to make this deck work is that like there are like actual like really good hand buff payoff cards with like the new Catacomb Guard and the First Blade of Rin. Both of these cards like can do something when they hit the board and like can generate tempo, and like that's something that Paladin like traditionally really struggles with after card draw. So like definitely keep an eye on both these cards. I think they're going to be very good. As for other new cards, we got the Alliance Bannerman that I mentioned in the Quest Paladin, but I think the card is going to be like an absolute rock star in this list just because of the hand buffing effect. Then we also got the new Varian King of Stormwind, and this card is just like potential tempo because we run rush minions, and then he's also value because he's drawing cards. So I think he's going to be like an all-star card in this list. And then finally, just really fast, in both my Paladin decks I covered, we got Blessed Goods, which I think is going to be like a Paladin staple just due to the sheer flexibility, like being able to discover from 3 different categories that all play to Paladin strengths. That seems pretty good to me, so I just want to squeeze that in there real fast. But enough about Paladin. Now we're moving on to everyone's favorite class, Priest, which got a lot of hype going into the expansion, and then the cards were revealed and people were sort of just like, But anyways, first up for you guys, I have a Quest Priest. And as people have joked, this is essentially the Curvestone OTK in that you basically curve out to complete the quest, and that allows you to eventually just flat out destroy your opponent in like an OTK fashion. In building this deck, I tried to include at least like 2 minions of every mana cost, so you don't have to like worry about potentially locking yourself out of the quest with like a poorly timed palm reading. I'll be waiting for that Trollton highlight, by the way. But anyway, since we run so many minions and considering like the quest is super slow to the point where like you're not going to need it in most games, I figured that like it would probably be a good idea to run a N'Zoth package as like a backup plan. So we've got that going on as well. And in this N'Zoth package, you know, we got the usual suspects, but we've also got the new Moarg Forge Fiend, which I feel like this card goes into like every N'Zoth deck outside of Demon Hunter because it's a defensive powerhouse. It's got armor gain on top of taunt. I'm very hyped for this card. Now moving on to my next priest deck, we've got the archetype that probably generated the most hype going into the expansion, and that is Shadow Priest. We exclusively run shadow spells in this deck so we can start the game with the Shadow Form hero power using the Dark Bishop Benedictus. And it seems like the intended game plan of this archetype is to like aggressively send damage face until your opponent gets low, and then like you kill them with the Psy Fiend comboed with Void Touched Attendant and then the Shadow Cloth Needle, and then, you know, obviously some shadow spells, which include the new very cool Call of the Grave, and then like the more serviceable at best in my opinion, Void Shard. Now while I'm very excited for Shadow Priest, I feel like the archetype as a whole might not be there yet. I'm just not seeing what Shadow Priest is going to be doing well against, but like, you know, maybe as the meta evolves it will occupy some niche I just can't see right now. And I know Wickedgood FM, he made like a very spicy corrupt Shadow Priest, so I'm going to also put like a link to that down below so you get a little extra deck there. But anyways, I'll be keeping my fingers crossed for Shadow Priest. Next up, we've got Rogue, which is getting a lot of fun cards in United and Stormwind. Whether they're good or not remains to be seen, but I'm excited to play this deck day one, and that is Quest Rogue. Basically, this is a Tempo Rogue style deck that has all the playable SI7 cards just jammed in because you're going to need that critical mass to be able to like consistently complete this quest. And then once you do, you play the Spy Master Scabs to add like a bunch of the spy gizmos to your hand, and then like you use those gizmos to disrupt your opponent and sort of snowball this tempo until you like close out the game. To mess with people even more, we're also running the new Maestra of the Masquerade, which, you know, probably isn't worth it, but I think it's such a fun, cool card that like you gotta throw this into your deck at least on the first day of the expansion. And like that's sort of how I'm approaching this deck. You know, like just have fun with it because like I honestly don't think it's gonna be better than like the Miracle Rogue that's been running around, because like the SI7 cards are for the most part they're not great, and like the gizmos also don't seem too great themselves. But this deck seems like it's gonna be like a lot of good old fun, and I'm just really excited to play it. As for my other Rogue deck, I have an archetype that I always theorycraft for Rogue every expansion because it's honestly a guilty pleasure of mine, and that is Stealth Aggro Rogue. My twist on the archetype for this expansion though is that we're gonna be spicing things up with a Death Rattle package. Basically, we run these new sketchy information in conjunction with the like aggressively statted Counterfeit Dagger to try to like sneak some minions on the board while like smacking our opponent in the face. Then for some more damage, we run the new spell Garrot, or Garrote if you want to sound fancy, and I think the card is actually gonna be really good, and I can even like see it making its way into like Miracle Rogue or like definitely Weapon Rogue because it represents just so much damage. And then finally, a card that low-key helps this archetype out a lot is the new SI7 Skulker, which, you know, gives you more redundancy in the 2-drop slot, so you're like not as reliant on the sneaky delinquent to like curve out efficiently. So like, you know, spicy Death Rattle stuff aside, like this card like legitimately could like help bring back Stealth Aggro Rogue, which, you know, personally I would be thrilled with because as I said, it's a guilty pleasure of mine. Okay, so next up we got Shaman, which like literally has like an embarrassment of riches right now. But anyways, for my first deck, I have for you a Quest Shaman list. Now this was a hard deck to build because you need to play 8 Overload cards, which like that's like actually like a lot of Overload cards, especially because like you need to have some like spells left over to be able to like get value from the quest, and then you also have to like balance the number of like nature versus non-nature spells, so just like a lot of moving pieces. But I decided to go more of a combo direction with this deck. Basically you complete the quest and then you play normal Brucan and a Novice Zapper with a Rune Dagger already equipped, so your nature spells have spell damage +5. Then you can cast 2 Lightning Bolts twice to deal 32 damage to your opponent's face. This is by no means the only way you can OTK someone, but like this is what I would like generally work towards in a game. Or like maybe you could just like play Instructor Fireheart after the quest and just win off that. That seems really good too. But anyways, as for other new cards, we got the Investment Opportunity and Overdraft, which, you know, I know they are not nature spells, but they both seem really good to me that I think it's worth potentially like whiffing on the Primal Dungeoneer, especially considering like both these cards also just like draw another card, so I feel like that downside like isn't too bad. And finally, we got the Canal Slogger, since we really value minions with Overload, because like that means we could like save our Overload spells to go face after we like complete the quest. But then like on top of this, like you get so much on this minion for the cost that like I think you're gonna see the Canal Slogger pop up in like every Shaman deck going forward. And now speaking of decks that are gonna be playing Canal Slogger, next up I have for you an Elemental Shaman. This archetype is getting a couple cards that like take this already good archetype and make it even better, with the first being that Canal Slogger that you can like potentially get down on turn 3 with this deck with Kindling Elemental, or even turn 2 on the coin. It's just so ridiculous to me. And then there's the new Granite Forgeborn that like discounts your elementals in your deck and hand by 1. And this card is really powerful because like usually discount effects like this only affect cards in your deck. So like definitely got like a little bit of power creep here. But on the other hand, because we're going to be discounting our elementals, it becomes very hard to almost impossible to corrupt a dunk tank. And I don't think an uncorrupted dunk tank is good enough in this list. So I decided to cut the dunk tanks from this list to just make room for these new cards. And finally, I also managed to squeeze in my boy Cornelius Rome just for more card draw. I think he's going to be nuts in this deck once you like discount your elementals and like just are emptying your hand super fast. He's just going to be like a great way to reload your hand and keep up that pressure. Now moving on to a class that's getting a lot of love in Stormwind. Next up, we've got Warlock. And I'm sure as you could guess by now, first up, I'll be talking about a Quest Warlock deck. Basically, this deck plays out like self-mill Warlock, but instead of the Niru as our win condition, we have the Quest. So the idea here is that you want to just churn through your deck as like fast as humanly possible while also damaging yourself so you can like complete the quest. Then once you do and you receive that Blightborn Tamsin, you play her and then you turn all that self-damaging stuff in your deck into damage at your opponent. And this includes fatigue damage. So like once you mill your deck, you can start dealing just so much damage to your opponents and like they can't really do anything about it. Now Warlock can naturally do a bit of damage to itself with its hero power, but we do run a couple new cards to sort of like help that damage along, like the new Bloodbound Imp and the Unstable Shadow Blast, which are like both like overpowered 2-mana cards that are like balanced out by doing damage to yourself. And you know, if you want to get like real spicy with things, you can like demonic assault yourself in the face, but I feel like this card's probably gonna be better used as removal. And finally, since we are doing a lot of damage to ourselves, we got that sweet healing with the Bloodshard Bristleback and the new Touch of Nathrasim to just sort of keep us from getting too low and like accidentally killing ourselves before we like complete that quest. Now moving on to my other Warlock deck, I have for you the beloved Hearthstone archetype that's making a comeback, and that is Handlock. Basically, this is a deck that wants to leverage a large hand size to do busted things. So we've got the Dark Alley Pact to make like a giant minion on turn 4, and Netheron that we're trying to like cheat out for 1 mana with a full hand, and then the Goldshire Knoll that we want to also just cheat out very early in the game. And I guess, you know, you could also include the package runner in this too, because, you know, he's a pretty chonky 3-drop that's going to be like a decent target for like an early stockade guard against like aggro decks. Now on top of these threats I just mentioned, we also got some like good old big hand support cards like Entitled Customer for some AoE and the Spice Bread Baker for healing. And, you know, I know this is a neutral card, but like, let's be real, this is going to be a Warlock card. Then we round out the list with a Soul Fragment package for even more healing, and then Jaraxxus as like a win con against just slower decks. And, you know, I don't know if this deck will be better than the like Quest Warlock, but I'm like so happy to see the return of Handlock, and I think it's gonna be like a pretty solid day 1 deck. Okay, so now moving along to Warrior, we'll be starting things off with like this ridiculous N'Zoth Silas Quest Warrior. I feel like when you look at the Warrior quest, you're like, pirates, I'm gonna make an aggro deck, which, you know, might work in Wild, but I feel like this quest in Standard is just gonna take way too long to complete, so I feel like it's better suited for like a control or mid-range deck. So that's where I like decided to go with Quest Warrior. The pirates are here to sort of get you through the early to mid game, with I think the best one being the new Cargo Guard. It basically has like pseudo taunt, because if your opponent doesn't clear it off, you're just getting like a ton of armor. Then eventually, you know, you play enough pirates to complete the quest, then you get the Juggernaut, which becomes like this source of constant pressure that your opponent like can't interact with. And like I feel like this gives you the space to like just gain more armor and get minions into your N'Zoth pool, and then you slam down that N'Zoth to recur all these minions that gain you armor. This board alone can net you like 20 armor. It's very ridiculous, and I feel like it makes it so easy to just OTK with Silas. So while I know this deck looks very greedy, I feel like everything will like hopefully work together to create like a powerful control deck that can like fall back on the Silas OTK to sort of like slap other control decks. So if you followed this channel for a while, you know that I like my big decks, and I cannot lie. So for my next deck, I have for you a big Warrior deck, which to everyone's surprise, like big Warrior is getting support in this expansion in the form of a couple cards. The first one being the new Cowardly Grunt, which gives us another way to just cheat out a big minion. And like, this is fantastic for big Warrior. Like big Warrior loves these effects because it just adds more consistency to the deck, which makes this deck more viable. But then on top of this, we're also getting a new Warrior legendary minion, Lothar, which seems exceptional in big Warrior because he's a big minion that you can cheat out early, and like he does something when you play him. Like he's able to attack a minion, so like he's able to like generate some tempo, and I feel like that's really good for big Warrior. But will like all this be enough to revive big Warrior? Yeah, you know, I'm a bit skeptical, but I love the archetype so much that like I'm definitely going to be jamming this like a few games this deck day 1. Now onto the final class, Demon Hunter. We've got an archetype that like I totally wrote off, but then like I saw people playing it during the Theorycraft stream, and I'm just like, there might be something to this archetype, and that is Quest Fell Demon Hunter. The idea behind this deck is that you strategically draw cards to advance the quest to like discount your cards, while also sending damage face with like the new Lion's Frenzy, or like potentially some fell spells like Fury, Metamorphosis, and the new Fell Barrage. which for the record can go face. Then once your opponent gets low enough on life, you hit them in the face with like discounted Illidar Inquisitors, or if that's not enough, you play the new Jace Darkweaver to like recast those fell spells just for like another round of burst. So as I'm sure you can see, the quest like really isn't a win condition in itself, and I feel like for that reason people are just like dumping on this quest. But I think when you think about it, like this quest allows you to cheat mana, which allows us to do like our powerful things just a bit faster, or like combo stuff in ways like opponents can't really interact with. So I feel like for that reason, I feel like this quest is actually going to be pretty decent, a lot better than people are giving it credit for right now. So if you got like one takeaway from this video, I feel like the quest is actually going to be decent. And finally, here we are, last deck of the video, and this one's going to shock viewers of the stream because you know I hate this deck with a burning passion, but I feel like it's actually going to be really good next expansion, and that's OTK Demon Hunter. So basically, OTK Demon Hunter has been picking up like a card or two seemingly like every expansion that makes it just like a smidge bit better, and I think Stormwind is no exception here. As you can see, like I threw in the Rust-Rot Viper over the Acidic Swampoos in this list because I feel like there will be some weapon decks floating around day one, and like OTK Demon Hunter doesn't really mind running weapon destruction, but I think this deck would much rather run the Rust-Rot Viper over the Ooze, just because the Viper has tradable, so like in matchups where there's no weapon, like you could just cycle this away and it just gets you to your combo a bit faster. And then the other card I added was the Sigil of Alacrity, just for some more card draw, and like even though like it's slower than card draw like Acrobatics, the Sigil has mana cheating stapled onto it, which is probably like the only thing OTK Demon Hunter likes more than card draw, because it allows the deck to just pop off with their combo just a bit faster, and I feel like that's often the difference between like winning or losing with this deck. So like I know we're not reinventing the wheel with OTK Demon Hunter, but like it's a deck that's proven to be resilient and viable since its inception, and I think it's going to be a strong contender in United in Stormwind. And there you have it, guys, 20 superior decks that you can play day one of United in Stormwind. I could finally end this video and like turn on my AC. Very happy about that. But anyways, let me know down in the comments what decks you'll be playing day one, and again, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more superior Hearthstone content. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Very hyped for United in Stormwind. Stay superior, and I will see you guys on the next one. Later. Eat my choke. Dirt. Get that